everyone, welcome back to Living Electric. We just hit a milestone. We are on episode 60. So thank you guys for all the support and getting us to this point. That's awesome.
Definitely.
That's essentially what, well, at the beginning, we kind of didn't exactly follow suit with the one episode a week like we're doing now. But yeah. So definitely got up to this point fast by doing these weekly episodes.
Right.
So we are doing a little bit of a lighter episode today, since it's Monday morning. Alex and I are still waking up. It's a holiday. But we do have some exciting news. We're going to cover some updates on our content, on our, our YouTube channels and so forth. But to begin, Alex and I are going to be at Fully Charged Live this upcoming weekend in San Diego.
Yes, September 10th through 11th, so Saturday and Sunday in San Diego Convention Center. I would definitely, if you're in the area, I would definitely recommend you attend, and that's coming from somebody that has never been there before. So it's definitely a very cool event. Just the coverage I see from it every year is really neat, and there's a great way to really immerse yourself in everything EV all at once if you really just want to kind of take it all in and see what's out there, because every major automaker I know of is going to be there. Every major charging network is going to be there. There's just going to be a lot happening. So really cool event, and excited to go out there for the first time.
Yeah, it should be a good time. It's going to be my first time as well.
Okay.
And,
I wasn't sure if you had been before, but yeah.
No, I wish. I mean, like, even just like as a person who's visiting instead of working a booth, which come visit the ChargeWay booth. I'll be in booth 410.
Nice. Okay.
I'll be there all weekend. This is my first time. But like, to give a little like background on Fully Charged, technically it's called Fully Charged Show, which is a YouTube channel. They have almost 1 million subscribers. Robert is the host, and they have co-hosts and different people who sponsor their videos, but it's all about electrification, from solar panels to electric vehicles to e-bikes to scooters, you name it. All of that is going to be covered in San Diego, so it's going to be a really cool event. So try to find Alex and I. Tyler's going to be there too.
Yes. I'm sure you'll be wearing ChargeWay gear. I'll probably be wearing my own like YouTube gear and some Living Electric gear. So hopefully you can spot us through that. I'm also really tall. I've noticed like people that watch me on either see me on like video calls don't realize how tall I am. So like if you see a tall guy that kind of looks like me, it's probably me. So
that was actually what I was going to say too. I'm like, just look for tall Alex and look for loud Brandon, or listen for loud Brandon, because you'll find me.
Right. Yeah, I'm quieter, so you'll probably see me from a distance before you hear me.
But seriously, if you guys are in the San Diego, California area, come check Fully Charged Live. It's going to be awesome.
Definitely.
There's going to be so many cool things, so many cool people to meet. It's going to be a good time.
For sure.
Moving on to media, because we have been very busy.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, so we've finally kind of started to get in the circles where you can get actual media vehicles. So like those that aren't in the content creation space, if you see your favorite YouTuber or even like a car show that's reviewing a car, typically that is not one that they have bought. That's usually provided to them by the auto OEM that has their own media and marketing department, and they basically have a fleet of cars they send out for these events for people to test and drive and write stuff up on, either make videos or write articles or whatever. But recently, so I've been fortunate enough to connect with some of those companies. I just got a Kia EV6, so I'm working on scripting that video right now. But super impressive vehicle, and I'm currently driving a Mustang Mach-E. So those two videos should be hitting the channel in the next few weeks. But yeah, that's been really cool that we've started to do that. And you've got a couple vehicles of your own you've been testing, right?
Yes, yeah, not fully electric like you have, which I'm jealous, because the EV6 and the Mach-E are really, really cool cars. Yeah. We were supposed to get that EV6, I think the same one, but they canceled on us.
Really?
And they're moving it to an event, so we're getting it later on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in October.
At least still get it. That's good.
Waiting to reschedule. Yeah, but I mean, I've heard great things about the EV6, and obviously we've driven the Mach-E, so that's a great car too. But the cars we're currently getting are the hybrid versions of the Kia Sorento SUV, and then next week we're getting the Kia Sportage hybrid, which is another SUV. And we're averaging over 40 miles to the gallon in a 3-row SUV right now, which
solid.
Is it's pretty impressive. Yeah. And it does run on the battery itself when it's just sitting there, like when it's like I'm doing air quotes, idling.
Yeah.
So, which is nice.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. But yeah, no, we're in with Kia now, so we're going to be getting, you know, a lot of their press vehicles, their plug-in hybrids, and so forth for Clean Technica.
That's
so
awesome.
Should be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your initial impressions? I'm guessing you haven't driven a gas vehicle for a while. What's that adjustment like? Because I just did that the same this past weekend with my dad's car, and it was weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was. So, like, at first I'm like, oh, this is kind of slow. And then I realized I had it in eco mode, which, like, you know, obviously tries to make it more efficient. Right. If you switch it to sport mode, or like what they call it smart mode, which is kind of like the balance between eco and sport,
right.
it's a lot better to drive. Like, there's a lot more power that gets delivered to the front wheels.
That's good.
So the only thing I'm not looking forward to is going to the gas station. So Tyler's doing that when I'm on a work trip tomorrow.
Perfect.
But it's been nice. I think the only thing that, like, going from the Model 3's interior, which I've been like getting really comfortable with, to a different setup is getting used to having steering wheel buttons again, getting used to a dialogue, analog. I think that's what they call it. Like that, yeah, analog. You know, like gauge cluster versus like a digital gauge cluster. But overall, it's been nice. Like, I just wish that it was, you know, the plug-in version.
Right.
I think I would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed is, like, anytime I hop back in a gas car, I'm immediately like, oh, like this, it almost solidifies that I'm like, I'm not going back to a gas vehicle. Just even just the driving experience itself, like when you press on the gas pedal, there's not a huge delay, but it's noticeable where it's like, oh, it hasn't sped up yet. And and like the regen braking, I didn't realize like how much better that makes the driving experience for me, at least. Like, one pedal driving is awesome. Not having to hit the brake, like getting used to that, like coasting was a huge adjustment for me, switching back to driving my dad's car this past weekend. But even there's like those two main things, I'm like, I don't like this. It's like, I don't know if it's just because what I'm used to now driving so many EVs, but I can't drive a car now that doesn't have one pedal driving, that doesn't have that instant torque. It's like, it feels like a step back in a lot of ways. And not to bash on Kia for those vehicles, but like, I mean, if they're not electric, that's hard to have those kind of features in a non-electric vehicle. So
yeah. And that was like the tough transition, because, like, you know, with hybrids, I don't exactly have a lot of experience with just traditional hybrid vehicles.
Right.
So I know that there's regenerative braking, but it only engages when you put your foot on the brake pedal.
Right.
Like, it's not like one pedal driving. So when I first got into it, just the sheer amount of coasting where the car doesn't slow down at all, I'm like, wow, this is the you know, just the propulsion of the vehicle like threw me off at first. And then seeing yourself or the gauge move to like charging the battery when you put your foot on the brake really threw me off. But then I got used to it like immediately once I, you know, remembered that it does not have one pedal driving.
I feel like it's also safer when like the default car state is slowing down or stopped. Like, if you think about it in a gas car, like if you let go and like you're not hitting anything, the car's just going to continue to roll forward, which I feel like is more unsafe. Like, if you were, like, God forbid something happened to you when you were driving, or like even just reaction times too. It's like, as soon as you like let up on the accelerator, your car starts slowing down. So it's like, you don't even have, you get an extra like second that you might like be switching to the brake pedal where your car is already slowing down, which I really like.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the one pedal driving aspects of EVs, and it's been so long since I've driven a plug-in hybrid that like I don't even like fully remember if it has like proper, you know, regen. Like our Volt, like in low mode, was kind of like the one pedal driving like option. So like you would put it in drive and you have to go back to low because you would get extra regen, but you would still have to utilize the brake pedal in some instances. It wasn't like what our Model 3 does or what the Bolt or other EVs offer.
Right.
But, so I do have a question. So since we're on the topic of Kia and you had a chance to have an EV6 for a week, how was that?
It was really nice. Really just well-built car in general. You can tell like they made it as efficient as possible, like just in the design of it, the charging aspect of it. Like that's the fastest charging car I've personally experienced that wasn't a Tesla. I mean, like it got up to, I was at like 20% state of charge plugged in, and it went from 20 to 80% in 20 minutes, with peaks of 235 kilowatts, I think. So, I mean, that's a green 7, right? Crazy fast. I mean, the fastest you can really get out of a current vehicle. And it was pulling over 200 kilowatts at above 50% state of charge. That's probably the more impressive part. Because, like, in my car, if I pull up to a V3 station, it's at the highest rate that, like, the Red 7 for, like, maybe 20 to, like, 35%. But then it quickly drops off and it gets slower. But for a vehicle to, like, sustain that charging speed for that long, I was crazy impressed. So that was really impressive. There were a couple parts I didn't like, and I'm trying to be very, like, unbiased as a reviewer to be like, hey, is this something that I just personally don't like and others may like? Like, trying to take myself, like, my personal preferences out of it. But there was like I almost noticed there was a little bit of a lag in the pedal. Like, they almost tried to mimic a gas vehicle, which I wasn't a huge fan of. Even in sport mode, like, when you press on the pedal, it still felt like there was a delay, which I thought was a little odd. Granted, I did have the rear-wheel drive version. I didn't have the all-wheel drive, so I'm thinking that may have contributed as well, just because it doesn't have as much power and only one motor. So I think that might have contributed. So I'm curious if I haven't driven the all-wheel drive, so I'm curious if that has a little more kick to it.
Tyler and I, we drove the all-wheel drive, the Wind variant, because I know you had the GT line rear-wheel drive. And the all-wheel drive reminded us actually like the Taycan we drove last year. Like, okay. You definitely, there's no delay. It's instant torque. And it does throw you back in your seat. Like, it has a lot more power.
That's what I've heard from, because a buddy of mine has an all-wheel drive, and he said the same thing. He's like, I am impressed with how much power this car has as like a crossover. Yeah. So I'm thinking that's just the rear-wheel drive. So it's probably going to be my recommendation. If you do want that extra power, like, go for the all-wheel drive. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, it was really solid. I actually brought it to a Tesla event. We had our, like, end of summer Tesla event and had a bunch of Tesla owners come out and check it out, which was interesting hearing all their perspectives, because a lot of people are pretty biased when they drive a Tesla. And all of them, like, were really impressed with it. They're like, this is a really nice car. Fit and finish is, like, a lot better than my car, I can tell you that. Even just, like, the insulation in the cabin, like, that's something I notice immediately going into any other car than mine, is, like, you don't hear as much wind noise or tire noise or just, like, exterior noise in general. It's just so much better done on some of these other vehicles. And that's something I didn't really, like, think about or was expecting till I hopped in and started driving a little bit.
Yeah, we noticed that with the Sorento we currently have, just like how well, like, so, like, I know Kia and, like, Hyundai products, they've really stepped up their quality in, like, the last decade, and it's really shown, especially, like, the newer vehicles. Like, you shut the doors on the Sorento, and it almost reminds me of, like, shutting a Mercedes door. Like, it's solid, it's quiet on the inside, like, it's awesome. Like, they've done such a good job with upping their quality.
Definitely. So that's something I definitely noticed. It was a very, like, comfortable, efficient, like, design car, which I really liked. The only, I think probably the biggest negative was just the like, car interface in general. I feel like they stole that from some other Kia vehicles. Like, it wasn't as EV designed or as modern as it could be. Granted, it was, like, still better than anything from 5 years ago. So again, I think I'm kind of, like, biased towards the Tesla touchscreens that are all, like, very modern, like, pretty well laid out UI wise. And even, like, I'm testing the Mach-E right now, and I'm really liking the design of that touchscreen and, like, how that's laid out. It's very, like, simple, big buttons and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's such a transition period in a lot of vehicles where they're like, people are trying to figure out what the best design is for a car interface, because we're rethinking a ton of stuff now.
I almost feel like, you kind of just got me thinking now. Like, I know when, like, the Model S first came out and you had that big vertical 17-inch screen, and, like, now the Model 3 and the Mach-E, they have 15-inch screens and you're starting to see 14-inch. I almost feel like we need to start getting away from the smaller screens, and this is kind of a controversial topic, so I'd love to hear what anybody else thinks about this. But just based on the sheer amount of information and control that like the driver needs to utilize throughout their driving, I feel like that's where those bigger screens will be better than like the smaller, more, landscape view screens.
Right.
Because
Right.
like the Sorento, I'm pretty sure has the same screen size as the EV6 does. But it just doesn't. When you have Apple CarPlay, it's shrunken and it's more spread out.
Right.
Which is, if you like that design, but I almost feel like it's just better on bigger screens.
Right.
So, but
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that driving the Mach-E, because the Mach-E has CarPlay as well, and I've been using that. I've kind of been switching between CarPlay and like the built-in navigation to see like what it's like. And that's something I noticed as well, is like the car screen is not there just to like be big. It's there to display information. So like I always want a bigger screen because you can see more of the information. Like you don't have this tiny little map there anymore. It's literally like a map-sized map. Like we used to, like people used to fold out the big maps. You can now see all that on this screen. So that needs to be like very big. That's like the default I have up anytime I'm driving, is this big map. Whether or not I know where I'm going or not, like I have the map up so I know where I'm at. So that I like being really big. And then music is really the only other thing I interact with when I'm in the car. So having those two interfaces be like really solid and really well built, that's like the most important for me. So I'm curious what you think of that though.
Yeah, it's funny because like, like at first before we like got our Model 3, I was kind of like cautious about like the infotainment screen because like I was so used to like the Chevy Bolt and like our ID4 and just like how the design was of those, and like getting into the Model 3, especially last week when I just, drove like 1,000 miles essentially, and like being in the car for 3 days straight, I really like learned to appreciate the design and like the simplicity of just one big touchscreen. Versus having, like some of like the other designs of like other vehicles. But the thing is that like the interface has to work for the driver, and it has to provide the information you're looking for in a simple way. Like you can't just be scrolling through, menus, and Tyler, I'm sure, has more opinions on this with his professional degree. But it's just it's interesting trying to learn how other companies are utilizing their user interface versus like what we're currently used to. But that doesn't mean Tesla's perfect. Like there's definitely room for improvement there too. But yeah, I agree with you. I think for screen size, I always thought like, oh, that's going to be distracting. But now I'm like, bigger is kind of better in this aspect. Like, I like the real estate of a bigger screen.
Definitely. And for maps especially, I think that's the biggest thing. Like that needs to be really well done on EVs or just cars in general, I guess. But specifically with maps is like the routing for charging and all that stuff. Like that needs to be really well done. And I noticed when I was driving the Mach-E yesterday, if you route through, I have Android, so Android Auto, if you route through that, it does not add charging stops. It'll just route you to your destination without stopping. It doesn't take battery percentage into account at all. And I'm not sure if other cars do that, somehow integrate with Google Maps to say like, hey, your car's at 70% and you won't arrive with enough, so we need to stop here. Like, I'm not sure. I know Google's trying to add that in, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know the Polestar and the other Volvo products that have like actual Android Auto, like like the software for the vehicle, that ties into your vehicle. But I think the different layering of Android Auto and CarPlay utilizing your phone is a different layer versus what's connecting to your actual vehicle. So I think I'm pretty sure that like when you plug in your phone via like a USB or like it's wireless, it doesn't connect to your actual vehicle. So, yeah, which I know Apple's working on that with their next generation of CarPlay. But, yeah, it would be nice if there was a way to at least pair in the two, so you can find charging stations.
Yeah, because that kind of, whatever. I was thinking it's like, it defeats the purpose of CarPlay or Android Auto if you can't get charging stops. It's like, I'm not going to use my phone if it's not going to, like, do all of it for me. So I found that as kind of a gap because I know a lot of people prefer CarPlay or Android Auto, and I haven't experienced it a lot, but I've been using it a ton with the Mach-E, and it is great. Like all of your notifications pop up there, like your music is already built in and like ready to play, and like it's got a really good layout. It fills up the whole screen. Like it's really solid. And I can see why people would want that on a Tesla. But again, I'm like, then if you route through Google Maps, then you're not going to get charging stops, and it's not gonna like take all that stuff into account. So like it's kind of a give and take with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the thing is that like I do want to give a shout out to ChargeWay. We do have an Apple CarPlay app. We don't have it for Android Auto yet.
Oh, dang.
But there are some apps that you can download to help you find charging stations and like do routes, but it doesn't precondition the battery pack like like Tesla's navigation. But you've been driving a Model 3 a lot longer than I have, and I know Tesla sends out like navigation updates to update maps. They just came out with an update for better visuals for like real-time traffic alert. Have you noticed that your mapping isn't as up to date as you think it would be? Like, say for example, if there's construction that's been going on for months now, it's obviously that like the data is out there somewhere.
Right.
Google has it. Why doesn't our Tesla have it? Have you noticed that?
I have. There's one specific example. There's like a little shopping center right by our house. And if we drive there, it will tell us to like go to the intersection, do a U-turn, and then turn right into the shopping center. So like basically drive past it, do a U-turn, and then turn right into it. And it's like,
oh yeah, I was in the car that one time.
You probably know what I'm talking about when we got bagels.
Yep.
And and it thinks there's a median there because I think that's how it used to be before they like kind of revamped that area. And there's not a median there. You can just turn left into the parking lot. You don't need to cross anything. So I've noticed that a ton, like just random little places where it's like, oh, you need to go this weird random route. And I'm like, can I just turn here? Like, why is it telling me to go this roundabout way? Yeah. I have noticed that. And I know part of it, like on the data aspect, and I could be completely off base here, but this is at least how I'm thinking about it, is you can't do like complete real-time mapping because it would just be like too much data for the car to download all at once to say like, oh, like we're getting like the live data of this road or whatever. Like it pre-downloads a ton of that stuff onto the map so you can pull it up quicker and it loads faster and all that stuff. Yeah, I have noticed that a lot where it's like you can tell it's definitely out of date by more than just like a month. Like it's been like this for years and it hasn't been changed. So, and I know they don't use, I don't think they use Google for routing. I know they use Google for like their base maps, I think, but they don't use it for the routing. So it's also this weird kind of combination of like a Google map interface, but then it's like routing using some other program, and I think there's some conflict there as well. Okay.
Yeah, because like I remember, years ago when I like worked for Tesla, like I'm pretty sure we used Google for the mapping and the routing, like, which was nice because you could count on it. But like this trip to Michigan last week, I gotta tell you, it was driving me nuts because there was more construction that had clearly been going on for months, and exits were closed, and like like the car was like, take this exit, and I'm like, it said no exit for 5 miles. So like, like I was prepared to take it, and then I realized it was closed, so I had to drive, do all these U-turns.
Geez.
And the most frustrating thing is that when I would type in superchargers, it would miss the superchargers. Like up in Traverse City there's a supercharger at a Myers up there, and it would take you to the opposite part of the parking lot to where the supercharger actually was.
Interesting.
And like the geopin was totally off. It was driving me nuts.
Really
I texted Tyler when I got to the supercharger. I'm like, I miss CarPlay.
Right, yeah.
I miss like reliable like navigation because it really added time to my trip because it kept getting me lost. It tried taking me down streets that didn't exist anymore. Like,
that's a situation like unique to EVs as well, because not only you probably lost time, but you're also then wasting more battery if you're trying to drive around, get to the right exit, or do the roundabout way to get to it. So it's almost like more crucially important for EVs than other cars. So that I haven't experienced that where it like told me to go to the wrong side of the parking lot. I have had it like loop around where it's like, oh, well, that exit's closed. I've got to loop around and there's no other way to go. So I'm going to waste an extra 10 miles, 15 miles on my battery because I got to drive up and around. So it's a problem for sure.
Yeah, it was frustrating. So hopefully Tesla can figure that out.
Right.
We'll see. I'm not going to throw shade because the rest of the drive was great. The supercharging aspect was fantastic. But yeah, just the navigation. I'm like, come on, like please update this. So when it comes to content, obviously we're recording more than just with vehicles, and I'm going to push this topic to you since you've been recording more with like e-bikes. Yeah. we're getting one soon, but I would love to know like how things have been going.
Yeah, so I got the Hemingway Cruiser. I did like 30, almost kind of a faux vlog where I was like basically recording like what I was taking my e-bike to go do for 30 days. So all those are posted on my YouTube channel. Should have a playlist for them as well. I realized after I did it too, I only posted 29 videos because like no. I'm a fraud.
You're fraud. No one's gonna trust you.
But I went back and I realized like day 8 or something like that of having it, I didn't ride the bike at all, so I didn't post a video and then just skipped to day 9. But then in the future, I would, if I skipped a day where I didn't ride at all, I would basically like the following day would be the next day instead of like just missing a day completely. So I did miss a day like randomly in the middle there. So only 29 videos in my 30-day e-bike challenge, but that went really well. I did a full review of the bike as well. It's been really solid. Like I'm still taking it on short trips around town. Like it wasn't just for the content. Like I really do want to get into more biking than taking my car places. Where we're at in Columbus, it's very bikeable and I can get to a lot of places quickly, so it's been really fun. So that video is posted, but then I've also got a Van Moof S3, so I've been riding that a ton. I'll have to look. They actually it's very Tesla-esque, which is kind of fun because they actually have an app that like connects to the bike, which is cool. You can use like the app to unlock
nice.
and lock the bike, and it's got like the Apple Find My like AirTag type thing built into it, so you can see like if you left it somewhere, like where it's at, or if it gets stolen, or something
like that. You can keep it track of it.
But I've only ridden like 30 miles on it, and I like to get at least like 100 miles in on a bike typically if I'm gonna review it. So I've had that for a couple weeks now. I just gotta get out and ride some this week and hopefully get a video out on that. But full review on that coming, and yeah, that's been taking up a lot of my time, is all the all the videos I've got in the pipeline. So Kia EV6 video I'm scripting right now. Mustang Mach-E video I am recording today, hopefully, if the rain holds off after we're done recording here. And then I've got to shoot the Van Moof video as well, and I've never posted our Ford Lightning video. Yeah, that we shot like a month ago. Yeah. So I've got to script and post that one as well. But a lot coming.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was the point of today's episode, is that we wanted to provide an update of where we are at, with what we're doing with content production, with what we're doing with work, and just pretty much like putting out there that like we have a lot of things coming through the pipeline, and that they'll be out soon. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask you, you've taken road trips on both the EA network. I'm guessing you've used like EVgo some as well, and the Tesla network now. Like how much better is the Tesla network than others? Ooh,
that's a loaded question.
Which one do you prefer? How about that? I'll just ask that and let you answer.
So you know how we got the CCS adapter? I was up in Michigan, and before I answer that question, I dropped the adapter in the parking lot. Thing and I damaged it. It still works, but it is scuffed up. But yeah, it was really embarrassing. This really nice ID4 driver showed up at the only Green 5 charger in Traverse City that works. It's the only fast charger in that entire area that works. All of them are down at the moment. And I was topping off because I was taking like station photos, and I felt like a jerk because I'm like, I have a supercharger down the street. Why am I using this? So I was panicking, and I pulled the connector off, and I like threw it across the parking lot, and it like maybe went 15 feet. Geez. And it was bad. Super embarrassing. But so I was utilizing that charge point station. But the thing is that like the experience for superchargers is a lot easier because like you do have that plug-in charge ability where you just simply pull up and plug in and it starts charging. Whereas with these other networks, you have to either utilize the RFID cards, the apps, and so forth. And if you don't have good service, sometimes that won't work. But overall, there's not much in terms of like a time difference when the station actually works. So like, I don't know, I'm a little The thing that I liked about the supercharger network is that they are literally everywhere, and it made the trip up to Traverse City a lot easier than if it would be like in like a a green vehicle utilizing the other networks. So like that was nice to have as a fallback, but I don't know. I feel like I'm a little indifferent to that question, if I'm being honest. Like, yeah, I don't know. I like both. Like the ones that cheats, I can get whatever, like cookies and stuff like that. Yeah. But what about you? I think you just got your first taste of
I wasn't.
right?
I was like, I kept an open mind because I'm like, I'm very pro Tesla on their network, and I feel like they still have the best network out there. It's just like significantly better in a lot of ways. Uptime being the main one, like they have over 99% uptime, which is for a charging network in 2022, like that's pretty damn impressive. Compared to some of the others, it's just not nearly that high. And the like plug and charge is really nice for Tesla vehicles. You literally pull up, plug in, it's charging within 15 seconds. Like you're actively charging your vehicle. And even the like site design, station design, how like clean it is, because they know where the port is on every single Tesla vehicle, so they can design the site properly. The cable's only like 6 feet long because that's as long as it needs to be. So that part's really nice. Yeah. But then I've charged with the Mach-E a couple times on EA, and I've charged with the Kia on an EVgo station. So we drove to Indy this past weekend and stopped in Hilliard on the way over there. We actually ran into Todd and Mariah. They pulled up their Lightning like as soon as we parked. It was so
That's
funny.
hilarious.
I parked and I was like, had just plugged in the Mach-E. We were sitting at the car, and then they pull up in their Lightning. I'm like waving like, hi. And they like had to do a double take because I wasn't in my Tesla. So they were like, who is that?
That's great.
But we were there and we plugged in the first station, and it only got up to, we were down like pretty low. We were at like 30% ish. Plugged in and only got up to 30 kilowatts, which is like really low.
That's
for
weird.
that, even for that state of charge, that's pretty low. And then the session just stopped after like 4 minutes of being plugged in. Like it just cut out. It said charging interrupted, please unplug. And it's like, what happened? Like, I don't even know what happened. So I just unplugged from that station, drove around, plugged into another station, and then it ramped up to like 100 and 120, and it was working fine. So I was like, I don't know what happened there.
So weird.
The nice thing with the Ford vehicles, though, is they do have plug and charge on EA stations. So if you've got the Ford Pass, you basically plug in, it recognizes the vehicle, it recognizes the payment, it'll process all that stuff automatically. It still, unfortunately, takes like 30 to 40 seconds for it to start the charging session, which is like way too long. Like, especially, we're lucky it was nice weather, but like I didn't want to stand out there in the rain to make sure it was going to actively start charging while I was after I'd plugged in the vehicle. So that part was definitely a downside. And then just the reliability too is like I had to try 2 stations and they didn't, like the first one didn't work. And then we ran into a very similar thing stopping in Dayton on the way back. It was like late at night in like a dark parking lot. And we plugged into the first station, only went up to like 7 kilowatts. I'm like, what is going on? So then I unplugged and plugged into another station, and it ramped up to like 150. And I'm like, what is going on? So I've got to go test it again probably to see if it's like a vehicle thing, because it's happened twice where I've like plugged in the first station, it didn't work, and then I had to plug in another one and it worked fine. So I find that odd that it happened twice.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like necessarily like a vehicle thing, because like we've experienced that before with like our Model 3 utilizing the CCS adapter. So I do know, and as you know from like working in the industry specifically with charging stations, a lot of the EA stations are utilizing older hardware, and those stations have been there for a while. And I'm noticing, actually, based on my research, they're tearing out those stations and putting in their brand new BTC power stations, which Yeah, so they just started doing that in New York, like the state of New York. So we should hopefully be seeing more reliable stations. But the station in Mentor, Ohio, we were testing out the CCS adapter, and there's no way for us to precondition the battery because, there's no manual way to do that. And it was pulling, I believe, 45 kilowatts, and we were at like about 35%, and we had been driving, so it's like the battery should be warm. and we're like, let's switch to the other one, and then it spiked up to 90 kilowatts.
That's so weird.
So
yeah.
I don't know if it's just the older hardware and it's like just starting to fail, and like, you know, maybe it just needs more maintenance. But yeah, it's it doesn't make it consistent, especially if now you move to the station that's working, and then like a driver drives up to that station. Now it's not working for them.
And
yeah, that needs to
for sure. And that's like you said. I don't think that's a Ford issue. It could very well be the charging station that is the issue. So it's hard to like figure that out. But the other part is on the Ford vehicles, and I asked Todd and Mariah about this on their Lightning. It doesn't show the kilowatts that the car is pulling, which I feel like is a major negative. Like, I understand the thought behind it, that like regular drivers shouldn't care about that stuff. But if you plug in and you're expecting the charge time to be 20 minutes and it says it's going to take an hour and a half, how are you supposed to, if the station isn't showing what you're pulling, like how are you as a like driver supposed to troubleshoot, like, hey, why is this having an issue? Because it's just saying, oh, it's going to take longer. It's like, well, why is it going to take longer? Like, I wish it just had some more information on there. And just add, and this is something they could easily do in a software update, is just show the kilowatts that it's pulling. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
That would basically show you like, oh, right, you're charging at 150 kilowatts. It's going to take 20 minutes versus, oh, it's only pulling 60 kilowatts. It's going to take this long. It's like, if you don't have that context, and it's hard to figure out like, hey, why is it taking so long? And Ford does a great job of showing like how much energy you're using. I don't know if you've seen that screen in the Ford vehicles, but they show like, it's basically like the efficiency tab where it's like your acceleration, you're doing like 99%, like you're doing great at like not hard accelerating or decelerating. You're doing a good job here.
Yeah.
Or like speed, like this is a lot lower because you're driving at highway speed, so you're not as efficient. If they had something like that for charging to say like, hey, why is my charge going to take so long? It's like, oh, well, you're actually charging at a lower rate than expected. So you can be like, oh, well, maybe something's wrong with the station. Like, you can kind of connect those dots. It doesn't necessarily just need to be like a number with no context. So yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, like, that's something Ford has always done great. Like with their Fusion hybrids back in, I think 2010 is when their first Fusion hybrid came out. They had a little gauge that as you drove it, like it was like a tree, and it would like start, you know, blossoming with leaves. That way you kind of got a visual idea of, oh, I'm driving more green. I totally agree with you. I think more companies should utilize visuals to highlight how the car's charging, how people are driving. It would just make it easier. You brought up a good point that it could be updated over like, you know, over the air software, like some type of software update. Because the ID4 at first didn't have the kilowatt readout when you're charging, and enough people complained about it to where Volkswagen updated it. So the new ID4s will show you your kilowatts, which is good. You know, it gives you an idea. But let me actually ask you this question. So, you know, with like kilowatts and like a lot of the engineering terms, how do you think an everyday driver would look at that and be like, okay, now my car is charging slower or faster versus like if there was just a simple like time readout? Like if you had both of those, how would you make that easier for drivers so
to
like
understand?
There's tons of marketing terms for this stuff too, where it's like slow charging or level 2 charging, and then it's like fast charging, and then there's ultra fast charging, and then there's like rapid charging. It's like all these names get super confusing, whereas like I think that's okay to have, but I would at least like the option. And I told this to Todd and Mariah too. I'm like, at least have the option. Like on phones, there's like, you can turn on like a stats for nerds, and it'll give you like the processing stuff on your like Android phone. It's like some people don't care about that or never going to use that feature, but like for the 10 to 15% of people that do want to see that, at least give them the ability to turn that on. And that's, again, like could be a software update. It's just a toggle in the charging settings where it's like show kilowatts. It's like, if you don't know what that is, you're probably not going to turn it on. But if you care about that, at least have the option to show that. So, but yeah, I think that would have to be another like education point where it's like, all right, if that's on by default and you're seeing a low charge rate and your kilowatts is low, are people going to make that connection? Be like, oh, like, what conclusion are they gonna come to? They're like, oh, this station is broken, or they're like, oh, something's wrong with my car. Like those are, and I'm doing the same thing. It's like, which one is it? So it's hard as a driver to kind of make that clear that, oh, the car is actually having an issue. It can't pull more than this right now for XYZ. And that's why I think that energy screen would be nice, where it's like, hey, we're only pulling X amount. We've actually requested this amount from the charger, but the charger is having an issue. Or you could be like, hey, we've requested, or we can only request this amount because the battery's cold. Like just adding context like that, I think would be great to just kind of help educate people on what different factors go into that. Like that's something a lot of people want to know about, I think, getting into EVs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you actually, I guess we're on the same wavelength, because I thought the same thing. Like it should easily describe like battery's too cold. Once battery warms up, it'll charge faster, or whatever. Like I know Tesla's like you'll get like the little like snowflake symbol, and then like on the bar it's like either blue, and like as you like drive it will like warm up. The Bolt was like that too. Like there was like a little gray line that would like slowly, as the battery warmed up, would like start disappearing, and then the little battery icon would go from gray to green, letting you know that your battery's warmed up. You're going to get the full amount of regen, charging, and whatever. But even then, like you look at those little visuals, and it's like, what does this snowflake mean? Like it's cold outside. Is that what it is? Like, yeah. I definitely think that when it comes to like teaching drivers, like especially from like a manufacturer standpoint, I think it needs to be crystal clear that this is what's happening. And even from a charging perspective too, like the network should have like a warning, like, it's the exterior temperature is cold. You're going to see a little charger, like until it warms up, or
and that's whatever. That's been a common thing, like showing warnings or showing info. Like that happens on computers all the time when you like click something you're not supposed to, and it's like, oh, can't do that right now. Here's the reason. It's like that is a common thing in all of the parts of our lives. Like just not adding that context, like really frustrates me sometimes, because it's like this would be such an easy thing to do. Or like out of order signs on whatever. It's like that's been a common thing. Like you just know it's out of order. You might not know why, but like at least you're not going to walk up to it and plug in, or like go try to use it. Or like I mean, it's a common thing. It would be an easy thing to implement, I think.
I guess we'll see how things play out. It's still, as we know, the Wild West. It's still crazy out there. But so I'm trying to think, how should we wrap up today's episode? Because I know it's been kind of all over the place. We've talked everything from fully charged live, navigation to charging, our content. I think we should talk about, since we're coming up on 2 years of living electric, which is crazy. That it's been almost 2 years
in January.
We
start in January of like 21, I think.
21.
So we're like a year and 9 months in.
Yeah, I mean, we did take a little bit of a hiatus in the beginning of 2021, but but that doesn't count. We're on episode 60 now. But I think we'd wanted to talk about like creating like a census to hear what the listeners wanted to hear, and like what you guys would like from us.
Yeah, we've gotten a decent amount of feedback from people, like guests we've had on, or just people we've met in public, or like at events and stuff, about the podcast. But I think we're going to put together like kind of a poll, or like a mini survey, hopefully that isn't too in depth, to basically get feedback from listeners, because we've gone back and forth just producing the show of figuring out like, hey, do what people like a lot of guests on the podcast, or do they like episodes like this where we're just like BSing and like talking about EV stuff, which can be more fun and entertaining sometimes when we're just going off on random tangents. But really just want to get the listener feedback, because this is who we're making the show for, is you all. So we'll put something together and hopefully link it down in the description for you to check out. But I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
I think it would just be good to get something out there, post it on our social. We could create a poll, maybe like on Twitter, or I don't know if Facebook does polls, but they might. We'll figure it out. But we'll get something out there for you guys to provide your feedback, because we always take that to heart, and we always want to make our show better, since you guys have supported us so far.
And we've got like we usually leave our email in the description too, if you want to send us a direct note saying, hey, I hated this, or hey, I love this, do more of this, then like we're open to that as well, as long as it's like in good faith.
Constructive criticism. Yes, exactly. But well, I think as a quick recap, I would love to get your thoughts on one, Fully Charged Live, if you guys are going to be there, navigation in Tesla vehicles, as well as all other EVs, and charging experiences, especially because I think it's becoming more common to see examples of where chargers are down, they're not charging as fast as people are expecting, and so forth. Definitely give us your comments. Let us know what you guys have experienced. We'll talk about it in a future episode.
Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope to see you at Fully Charged Live. Come say hi to us. We won't bite. So
yes.
Yes.
Take selfies with us.
Definitely.
Let's take selfies.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, have a good rest of your day, everybody, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.